And we are back. Hey Taylor, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to hear you speak. I'm just getting my cheat sheet here back. But so what we've been doing is, since it is a talk, or well, it's called Summer Community Days. So I'm asking everybody a question about summer. If I recall correctly, you're still living in the UK. Is that right?
I am. I'm in London. Yeah.
If you're in London, so the question I have for you is, well, where were you from in the states, and what do you miss about summer wherever that was in the states
Ooh.
now?
I grew up in South Florida, so the summers there are pretty miserable actually. So we used to just like not leave the house because it was so hot and humid. So I think I miss like yeah, maybe having a barbecue outside, jumping in the pool in the evening when it finally cooled down before the mosquitoes came out. That kind of 20 minutes that we had, it was nice.
Oh,
It's good. Yeah.
that's funny. That's hilarious. Well, everybody, this is Taylor Brownlow. She is head of data at Count and probably has also done every other role at Count in their short history. She started a career at Intel as an engineer and later data scientist before moving to the UK to join Count. She lives in London, as she just told us, and she's committed to the cause of finding a half decent bagel in London. So thanks, Taylor, and I'm looking forward to hearing you speak. I'll let you go for it now.
Oh, thanks, Trevor. Hey everyone, it's really nice to be here. This is a really great event, so I'm really happy to be able to participate and speak. And today I'm going to be talking about Agile, and I think an alternate title to this is What if Agile didn't suck? So keep that in mind. If you're not a fan of Agile, that's good. You're in the right place because we're not going to be banging the drum on Kanban or anything like that. So, started. A little bit of background about me. So yeah, like Trevor mentioned, my background is in engineering. I was an engineer in college and then joined Intel, first as an engineer, and I really quickly started doing all the data stuff for them and really liked it. And really got into it and thought maybe I'll make this into my career. So I went and joined the kind of data team, one of the many data teams at Intel, and I quickly found that all the things that I loved about data and the engineering team were gone. So somehow being on the data team made things a lot worse, and I couldn't do the things I really loved. And so I found it really frustrating. In particular, just to give you a taste of kind of what my life was like, and I think a lot of people can relate to, is this kind of thing was all too common, where I might get asked to do something, and I'd make all the effort in the world to make sure that what the business was asking for was really clear, that they were really sure what they needed. I was really trying to get to the heart of the problem. Did a lot of upfront work. Would go ahead, go away, do my fun analytics, get some kind of dashboard or something together for them, make it look really nice and clear, go send it to them, and then they would eventually say, no, actually, we need something else now. And I would start again from scratch. And I was just constantly so frustrated by this. I think another summary is that I felt really torn between the things that the business wanted me to do and the things that I really loved doing about data. And I felt really stuck in the middle. And actually, I decided one day I'd been doing this for a few years at Intel, and I decided I don't think that I should be in data anymore. So I decided to leave Intel and to leave data, and I had all intentions of going to do something else, and moved across the world to London to really, get the distance. And I obviously didn't get very far, so I now work at a data company of Count. It's called Count, and I've been with Count for 5 years, and we have been talking to people nonstop for those 5 years about what it's like being in data. And what I've learned is that I'm really not alone. And I even heard it in Josh's presentation before this, so he was talking about that. But so many people feel like this, and so many data leaders are constantly trying to solve this problem of how we work with the business while also do what we need to do as a data team. And so how this is our big pain point. If you ask where does it hurt, I think in a data organization, it's whenever we're interacting with the business seems to be exactly where things hurt the most. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. And I got some data as a data person to back this up. So Stack Overflow every year does a developer survey where they ask people all sorts of really cool questions, really cool data set. Encourage you to go look at it. One of the questions is how satisfied are you with your job? And data analysts are among the most dissatisfied with their job out of any of these roles. And they're a lot worse than data engineers or data scientists. Data scientists seem pretty content actually. So if you're on here, good for you. But data analysts really not doing great. And I took this one step further and I wanted to see, well, actually, does being a data analyst make other happier people less happy? And it does. So you could have a very happy developer, and if they are also a developer and an analyst, they're less happy than if they were just a developer. This is across the board. And this is one of the worst like careers that does it. The only one that's worse is a developer of game and graphics, and that's probably just a small number, isn't it? So as you can see, analysts aren't happy. Things are going wrong. And what does this look like? And so if we think about the culture that's going around these analysts that are really struggling, they are particularly impacted by culture because they are, like that meme, they're being pulled in two different directions, right? They've got the business wanting one thing and the data team tends to kind of wanting another thing. So what does this come down to? I think we all feel the number one thing is they don't feel like their work has impact. They're not connected to what's actually happening in the business. Where does their work go? They're given tasks instead of being given problems. They have constantly shifting requirements, like in the image I showed you a couple slides ago, where once you give something to the business, suddenly it's changed and you have to start again. Communication is highly formalized these days, and it's more and more formalized, where you have to communicate through a form or something like that if you want to talk to the data team. And all this, again, we're kind of building and building up to this sense. Now you get a sense of mistrust. And so you start to hear things like, I don't use that report because the data's wrong. I don't trust them. I'm just going to do it myself. And so these two groups are moving further and further apart until finally you get to apathy, where these two groups are just not talking to each other. It's really like a couples therapy where these two people are just not speaking to each other. It's really bad. And that's really what we want to avoid. Hopefully you're not in that situation. If you are, I'm very sorry. So hopefully I've convinced you that it can be tough out there. So what does this all have to do with Agile? Now, in all honesty, if you'd have asked me what I thought about Agile 6 months ago, I would have told you it's complete BS. It's what corporate people just tell you to do. It's what consultants come in and tell you to do Agile or Scrum, and it's just we don't really know why we're doing it. It doesn't make a big difference. I was very against it. And for some reason, late last year, I decided to look at the history of Agile. And what I found was actually really interesting. So these software developers, they got together and they went to some mountain in Utah, something of all places, and they said, we really don't like what we're doing. We're trying to build software. It's not going well. The software we're building isn't great. We're not enjoying it. We really hate this. So what can we do about it to change it? And so they came up with a series of values and principles. And I won't go through all those. You can go look up their manifesto. They did make a manifesto. They were very confident in themselves. And they did three things that were really, really interesting. So the first thing they did was they set a goal for themselves. So they said, our job as software developers is to make great software. That's what we do. That's all of this is about doing that. So they set the target about making great software. The second thing they did was they focused on what they called the mushy stuff. So this is all the interpersonal kind of stuff. They said, look, none of this is worth anything if we don't like how we're working or who we're working with. We don't collaborate with people well. We don't do this well. So let's actually make it a focus that we pay attention to the mushy stuff and how we work. And the third thing that they did, which was really powerful, is they said they took this thing that was the most frustrating part about how they worked, which was constantly changing requirements that they were getting. And they said, instead of moving that away and saying, we're just not going to deal with shifting requirements anymore, pushing it back on somebody else, they said, actually, it's going to be a competitive advantage for us if we can shift requirements better than anyone else. So they turned this thing that was so painful for them, and they turned it into a competitive advantage and realized that if they did that thing well, then they could do their ultimate goal of delivering software better than anyone else. And that's a super powerful way to think about your problems. And I see that so often in data, we react the other way, right? What are the things that we hate? We hate follow-up questions. And what do? We don't encourage them, we discourage them. We force them through official forms to request feedback, or we go through all these official channels we distance ourselves further and further away from the people we need to be speaking to. And I won't go through these again. You can kind of read them on your own time, but these were the original Agile Principles and Values. So I looked at this and thought, well, let's give this a go for analytics. So what if we applied that thinking? Again, there's three things that they did where they set the goal, they made it about people, and they took something frustrating and turned it into a competitive advantage. What would happen if we did that with Agile? So I came up with a set of principles. I don't have a manifesto. I'm not that confident in these yet. So it's just an idea. But we should try to build one. If you're interested, hit me up. So the first one is, what's our goal? So our highest priority in data is to enable the business to use data to drive better decisions through continuous delivery of actionable and accurate analytical assets. That's ultimately what we have to do. If we don't do that, none of this matters. So that's our goal. Now, this is my competitive advantage one here. So we welcome changing requirements and follow-up questions even late in the Agile process. Agile harnesses change and curiosity for the stakeholders' competitive advantage. So again, this is turning the things that we are frustrated with, like follow-up questions, and how can we turn that around to make it a competitive advantage? This is my mushy principle. So how can we build this all around motivated people? How can we give people the support that they need? How can we change that graph from analysts being the most dissatisfied to the most satisfied? How do we change how we're working in these teams? And the last one I included here was about transparency. I think it's so important when we are kind of a technical group, oftentimes speaking to a less technical audience. How we enable that transparency is the key to how we do our job well. So we need to be more transparent and not think that we need to hide complexity away all the time. Sometimes we do, but not all the time. So how do we be open about how we work, including when we don't know something? Or how do we say how long something's going to take? We really need to think about how we communicate, to bring up Trevor's mantra for the day, open communication. This one is really about how we do that well. And this is a summary of those here. I also came up with a set of values. So values in the Agile context, you're saying you pick this over this. It's not like you don't care about the things on the right, but you care about the things on the right less than you care about the things on the left. Yeah. So the first one, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We all love talking about tools and we all love talking about processes like Agile and Scrum. And even these guys said, look, this is not about tools and processes. These patterns that I'm talking about, these analysts that are frustrated, these heads of data that are trying to fix this, you could have the best data stack in the world and you still have this problem. It doesn't matter what tools you have to think about this outside of the tools that you have. The second one, answering questions over building beautiful outputs. We love building beautiful things. It's great. I love it too. But you can build something really simple to answer effective questions. And we have to start getting into that mindset. We have to give up sometimes building something that looks amazing because we get so invested in it, and just answer the questions and be really effective in that sense. Which is kind of related to the next one, which is getting to why over getting to done. So instead of we get something, a request in or something like that, we need to really tease out why we're being asked to do this. What value is this going to bring before we just tick off all the boxes and send it over? And the last one is about telling the whole story over showing the number. So I think we fall into this sometimes where we just kind of come, here's the number you wanted, here you go, and you've got the context, you'll figure it out. We have to share context and tell the whole story. Now, what does this look like in action? So I think I only have a few minutes, so I'll just pick this one. So we've been working with a lot of our customers at Count about how to work in this way, both by using Count and even things that doesn't have anything to do with using our tool. So one of the most powerful ways that I've seen this happen is in an ad hoc request. So this is with a company called Tails that we work with. And one of the analysts there, she got a request from the business and she said, okay, well, what if I try to do this a little bit differently? And so normally she would have to, if she did this, she would get a request in, she'd go away, she'd do some work, maybe send it back over an email and say, hey, can you give some feedback? Go back, make some changes. And the whole thing might take 3 days. So what she did instead is she said, actually, let's come in here and work together. As you and I just solve this, let's bang it out in an hour, it's figured out. And then they took something that would normally take 3 days to get to an answer, and they did it in 1 hour because they opened up communication. They tried to get to what was actually going on. She encouraged questions to be asked in the session instead of just taking one question at a time and teasing it out. And by doing that simple thing by just following a few different values, then she was able to save herself 2/3 of the time it would have taken her to do it in the first place. So we probably are running out of time, I think. We have some time for Q&A. So I'll hold off on these. I'll share them after, but they're very cool. The last thing I'll say is if you want to learn more about this, learn more about the teams that we're working with who are trying this, learn more about the slides that I skipped over, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about this. I'm in the OA Slack. You can send me a message. I do write about this. I do prefer to write than to speak. So there's some writing out there about this. So please do follow me on there. But thank you guys so much for having me. I hope that was helpful. And if there are any questions, shoot them over in the chat.
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, I think what we can do is we don't think of a ton of questions. I think what might be interesting is actually just I'll ask the question and then you can give us the answer, and hopefully Brittany in the backstage can update back to your slides. Can you show this in action? I think, which was the question to prompt you to show us the rest of your deck, because I think we do have time for it.
Oh yeah, the other use cases, like one of these. Yeah. Yeah, so this one is thinking about data engineering in particular, like how you communicate. Like, say you have a data model that you've built and you want to make that data available to a stakeholder. A lot of times how we do that is we create like a data dictionary or something like that. And that's how we think about data. That's not how other people think about data. What if we thought about communicating a schema or something like that in the context of the world that they live in? So in this case, this is something our investors do all the time, and they suggested it to us actually, which is, you take screenshots of the tools that you're representing or the processes that you're representing, and you embed the data that you actually store next to it and say, this is the table that represents this page that you know, and when you click this button, this is what happens. And so they are fundamentally rooted in how they understand the world to work, and the data makes much more sense than if you just gave them, well, here's a table, and they have to abstract again to figure out what that means. So that's another example. Yeah.
I think I've just seen you guys change a lot of the product over the last couple of years. And I think this is a fascinating, different approach, which is really interesting. You guys offer a free trial. I shouldn't be pitching, but you guys offer a free trial. That's correct, right?
We do, yeah. We've been in private beta for the last 6 months, so we haven't actually really shown anyone what we're working on. But yeah, this is screenshots of our tool, which is a whiteboard for data, a canvas, where you can write SQL. It's part BI tool, part Miro, essentially. And so you can do this kind of way of working much easier. Yeah, we're going to be going out of private beta in the next few months. So if you want to we do have free trials, and it's free for up to 5 users. So yeah, if you want to try it out, please reach out.
You heard it here first. It's count.co, folks. I have one question since we got the time.
Yeah.
What happened to your American accent? I'm just kidding. I started to hear that little bit of Brit accent coming out. No, the real question is, what do you think of the? I mean, first off, throwing down the gauntlet, putting the principles out there, I think is something that should be publicized. Is something people should be aware of. Where is that documented? Where is that public?
That's a good question. It's currently not. This is kind of something I've been working with a small group of people that are like actively excited about it as well. I think We'd like to put a first draft out there very soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, but we've been trying to kind of test this stuff out first to see what sticks. Yeah.
Which one of the principles were you kind of like most uncomfortable with that like took you the longest to come around to? Or was it all just like, yeah, this is right?
I think the one about encouraging questions was the most uncomfortable one by far, because it's the one I think as data people we rebel against the most, and we say like, you just need to ask better questions. Why don't you ask better questions? And we want to control everything as well. I think it goes completely against how we operate in so many other domains, and so it's a very uncomfortable space for us to live in. And I've noticed a lot of people really push back to this one when I bring it up, and they don't like it. So that's definitely the most challenging one. I think the others, sometimes they're a little bit, um,
Sorry.
you know, that's okay. No, that's the most challenging one for sure.
Yeah, no, that those are great. I look forward to seeing. Hopefully, you'll share with our community, and we'll get it on the newsletter and everything when those get published. But right, so first off, thank you again for sticking up through the late in the evening and sharing this all with us. Um, uh, for those of you watching, the next talk will be hopefully I don't butcher this name. It's Lakana, I think. Hopefully, Satish. She will be speaking in the next about 2 minutes. And well, if you just hang on, we'll be back after a quick message from our sponsors. Taylor, it's been great hearing from you, and thanks again. And hopefully we'll hear from you in the community soon. So hang tight, folks, and we'll see you soon.